It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. Thanks for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and this is your first time tuning into this program. This is where we focus on all things residential real estate here on this program. So anything at all real estate related, I like to cover on this program. And it's all designed to make you, the consumer, more informed with regard to real estate. So if you're considering buying, selling, or investing in real estate, or if you just like to stay up to date with what's going on in our market, you've got a good platform to do that here on this program. I will say that I'm live this morning. If you'd like to call in and comment on anything that we discuss, or if you have a story you'd like to share, the number in the studio is 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. Now, if you'd like to reach out to me personally, you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, I'd love to help you with that. I can be reached personally by calling my cell phone, 843-345-1273. That's 345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can look at everything I have for sale, everything I've sold, search the entire MLS, learn more about me. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab, and you can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. So that's listingsincharleston.com. Let me tell you what I want to talk about this morning, because I've got a lot of ground to cover. Very, very busy market. It's been a busy market all year. I mean, it's just a lot of activity out there. And I am noticing some shifts in the market that I want to discuss this morning. And I'm going to talk about that first. But a little later on in the program, I want to talk about investors. And I'm going to talk about whether or not it makes sense to invest in real estate at this point in time. I want to talk about home inspections. I want to talk about what I'm seeing when I'm representing sellers or buyers to help them buy and sell real estate, and how inspections are playing a really vital role in that process. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what's going on in the market as it relates to inspections. We're going to talk about Airbnb. We're going to talk about the city of Charleston, Mount Pleasant. For those of you that don't know what Airbnb is, I'm going to explain what it is, and I'm going to talk about some of these fines that have been issued to people that are essentially breaking town regulations. And then lastly, we're going to talk about the profile of home staging for 2015. Does staging make you more money? Does it actually work? So that's all we're going to talk about this morning. But if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything you want to share, again, call into the studio, 843-556-1250. We'd love to hear your story. So let me tell you what I see is happening in this market right now. And first, before I tell you a few stories, I want to just go over some very basic numbers here. I want to talk about just the market overview in general. If we look at new listings and we compare what's happened this year to the same amount of time in 2014, we've had an 11% increase in new listings. So last year, this time, we had about 11,000 new listings hit the market. So far, year to date, at the end of June, this does not include July yet, but at the end of June, we had a little over 12,000 properties hit the market, so an increase of about 11%. Pending sales, which means properties that go under contract, went from 7,600 in 2014 to almost 9,500 pending sales so far year to date at the end of June. That's a 24% increase in new contracts. That's a large number of new business when you consider how busy our market was last year in 2014, and even 2013 was a very busy market. And then we moved to closed sales. Actual closings, conveyance of property. That's up almost 20% year to date versus 2014. We've had almost 8,000 closings at the end of June, whereas at the end of June in 2014, we only had 6,600 homes closed. So almost a 20% increase in closed sales. Now, one of the things that I look at very closely is days on market. It's a function of the inventory that we carry, and it's a reflection of the demand among buyers in our market. Year to date, we're looking at an average days on market of 67 days. That's across the board, Tri-County area. Last year, June 2014, we had 83 days. So days on market is down 20%. Everybody always wants to know about price. What I'm going to say about price, I'm going to give you just the statistic here, which is market-wide, Tri-County area. all price ranges, all locations, it's up about 3% on average from this amount of time last year. But if you look at some of the different areas of Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, we have some areas that are up over 10%. We have some areas where I've seen as much as a 20% increase in pricing just since last year. So it really is neighborhood specific. If you want to know what your house is worth, I would say it's very specific to your area, to your neighborhood, and to your price range. Because if you think about it, Charleston County, as an example, has all types of properties. It has the $50,000 condo in North Charleston to the $10 million oceanfront property on Isle of Palms or Sullivan's Island. So it's a huge range, and it's not fair, in my opinion, to just tell you that prices are up 3%. If you want to know what's going on in your area, contact me. My number is 843-345-1273. Or again, you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, submit your information and your address, and I'll just send you a quick report of what's happened in your neighborhood specific to your home, and I'll give you an idea of what I think your house is worth. And a lot of people are really surprised at how much their home is worth today. So let me just tell you a quick story, because these statistics look really good on paper. But I want to use this radio show as a platform to tell you what I'm personally experiencing in this market. And this was a big week for us because we wrote our 100th contract this week. So we're in the market. We're doing a lot of business. We have a very good pulse on what's going on. And so let me tell you this story. We sold a house to a guy who bought a house for his son back in April. Bought it for about $160,000. It was a bidding war. They ended up buying the property for a little over $160,000. He called me up on Tuesday of this week and he said, Brian, the job that my son had did not pan out, and he's actually going to come back and he's going to work with me in a different state, totally different area of the nation. I want to put the property on the market for $175,000 so that I can pay for commissions and closing costs, and I can break even. I don't want to lose any money on this sale. So, of course, I explained to him, if we list the property at $175,000, you bought it 3 months ago for $160,000, that's an increase of over 10%. So is it realistic to assume that your property has appreciated in value 10% in a 3-month period? He's done nothing to the property, by the way. All he did was move in, and then he moved right back out. So I said, all right, I'll put the property on the market for $175,000. We'll see what happens. He's a good client. I'm here to help him out, help him through this situation. So it hit the market Thursday. Got an offer Friday that we negotiated, and the buyer is paying above asking price with closing costs included, and there is a 10% increase in the offer amount versus what he bought it for 3 months ago. And I think the seller obviously is thrilled. I'm thrilled. I'm very surprised. But the issue is this. How are we going to substantiate a value at $175,000 when it was purchased 3 months ago for $160,000? Has the neighborhood appreciated 10% over a 3-month period? I'm not here to say yes or no, because at the end of the day, the buyer's willing to pay it, and I'm not going to get in his way. I want to help my seller sell the property. But what I'm finding in our market right now is, because of a lack of inventory, because we've had a 24% increase in pending sales, because we've had a 20% increase in closings, because properties are selling faster and for more money, buyers are in a position where they feel a sense of fear that if they don't buy something now, it's going to be more expensive later, and they might have to pay more because they might have a higher interest rate. A few shows ago, I talked about the impact that an increase in interest rates would have on buyers. And if your interest rate increases by 1%, if it goes from 4% to a 5% interest rate, that's an increase in your monthly payment of 15%. So with this buyer, they paid what we were asking. Again, I'm shocked, I'm happy, I'm elated, I'm also concerned, because when things like this start to happen in our market, it reminds me of where we were several years ago, right before the bottom fell out from the market. And having been through that, I got my license in 2006, and basically the market crashed just a year and a half later. I'm fearful, quite frankly, that prices are moving faster than appraisers can justify. And at the end of the day, the majority of sales have a mortgage attached to it. So we have to have the property appraise for the contract amount. or higher. When you have areas that are appreciating as quickly as this home is perceived to have been appreciating, then you have to have some information, some market data to back that up. But that in and of itself is the problem. When you have a market where prices are rising, every sale prior to the contract that you sign for your home theoretically is going to be at a lower price. So what do we need? We need for appraisers to take into account the fact that the market is appreciating, and they need to adjust the comparable properties that have sold over the past 6 months to reflect current market conditions. Some appraisers are doing it really well. Some appraisers are kind of using a CYA technique, and they're just going off of what the comps say. And I can understand that, because appraisers got a lot of flack when our market bottomed out, because they were essentially giving people the value that they needed in order for the deal to get done. And there was a lot of stuff going on at that point in time. I don't necessarily want to harp on the lenders that were giving, subprime loans and taking advantage of buyers, or buyers taking advantage of lenders. That's not what I'm here to talk about. What I'm here to say is that buyers are paying more than what I think makes sense to pay because of the fear of losing out on being priced out of the market. So for a buyer, when we represent buyers, obviously we want to get them into a home. We want to help them purchase something with the idea that they're going to own it for more than 3 months, right? So we want to try and get them a good deal. We want to get it for under fair market value. That's the goal every single time, to get a good deal and to get good terms on the contract. If you're a seller and you take everything that I've just said into consideration, now is a really good time, if you're thinking about selling your house, to determine what your house is worth. If you bought your home at the height of the market, depending upon where you live, I'm going to venture a guess and say that you are probably now in a position where you can sell your home, pay for commissions, pay for closing costs, and break even based on the price that you paid at the height of the market. That's where I see our market right now. So it's a very good time, if you're a seller, to put your home on the market and take advantage of the dynamics in the market, because again, buyers are paying what sellers are asking, and sometimes they're paying on properties that don't have comps to justify the amount that the buyers are willing to pay. So when I come back, I want to talk about this same dynamic, but I want to talk about investors. I want to talk about Airbnb. I want to talk about VRBO. I want to talk about all that good stuff. If you have questions, again, there's a lot going on our market. Give me a call in the studio, 843-556-1250. We'll answer your questions. But stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. We just finished a conversation about what's going on in our market, but if you missed that, I'm gonna circle back. I'm gonna talk about the investor side of our market right now, and just dive deep into that section of our market, because when you learn about the things that are happening with regard to price and lack of inventory in our market, from an investor standpoint, the question always becomes, where are the good deals, and what can I expect from a return on investment if I'm going to invest in real estate right now? So I want to tell you a story just about me personally. I grew up in a household where we have done real estate for the past, 60 years at this point. My grandfather started a real estate company, grew it from nothing to then developing and owning several shopping centers up and down the East Coast. My father managed that business for a few decades. I was going to do commercial real estate, but I moved to so kind of a funny story, sidebar. I was going to go straight into the family business, and my dad, being the intelligent person that he is, said, "Son, you need to go out and you need to get some outside experience before you can come and work for the company." So I went out. I was here in Charleston. I went to the College of Charleston. I graduated. I got straight into residential real estate. Obviously, the market crashed. Things got very difficult. I had to very quickly determine what my value was going to be as somebody in their early to mid 20s to clients that were essentially going through the worst time in their life from a real estate perspective. So I focused on short sales and foreclosures, and I became an expert in that section of our market so that I could be of value to people. I represented sellers to help them sell their short sales. I represented buyers and investors to purchase short sales and foreclosures. And for a long time, that's almost all of what I did. Now, fast forward to the market now, we have hardly any short sales and foreclosures to choose from. There is a lack of inventory when it comes to those distressed properties. So when I get contacted by investors that said, hey, we're interested in short sales and foreclosures, I have to tell them what to expect from that perspective, because quite frankly, short sales and foreclosures are going to be processes dictated by the bank. And I'm just telling you right now that my experience over the past 12 months has been that the bank wants very, very close to what that house is worth at fair market value. In my opinion, unless the home needs a lot of work, you're going to end up having to pay very close to what that house is worth. Now, there are some exceptions to that, but with regard to short sales and foreclosures, there's not a lot out there. A lot of people have chosen to be investors right now, and so they're looking for those opportunities. But the real deal investors are snatching those up as soon as they hit the market because of the relationships that they have with REO agents or asset managers at banks or whatever the case might be. So where do we go to find those good deals? I've always had really good success with estate sales. You know, people that have passed away and someone has inherited the property and they want to liquidate the home to get their cash out. Those are two properties that I've purchased that did phenomenally well for me. And I'm going to take a break and I'm going to go to John in North Charleston. John, how are you this morning?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Fantastic. How can I help you this morning?
I just want to get your take on what do you think about VA loans? I've heard on some talk shows that VA loan is not the way to go. You should get traditional loans through the bank, and basically, I just want to get your idea on what do you think about VA loans?
Sure. Well, I think obviously the advantage to using a VA loan is it's 100% financing. So for anybody that's ever served in the armed forces in some capacity, they have something called a certificate of eligibility that allows them to use a VA loan and get 100% financing. So theoretically, you could purchase a home for zero money, because what a lot of people with VA loans do is they'll make an offer, but they'll ask the seller to pay their closing costs. So for the buyer, for the borrower, it costs them no cash. And if cash is tight, or if they have their cash invested elsewhere at a rate of return that's earning more than the interest rate on their mortgage, then I think VA loans make a ton of sense. But again, okay. I think it also depends on the type of property that you're purchasing and your plan with that property. If your plan is to buy it and then sell it in short order, VA loan might not necessarily be the way to go. I think it's borrower specific, but I think just in general, VA loans are a fantastic product, and I see them used all the time. Any other questions that you have about that?
No, you've answered what I needed to know. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for calling in.
Take care.
All right, so let me switch back to talking about investors. And I was telling you about my family background and history and how they built their wealth through real estate. There's two paths you can take when it comes to investing in real estate. There's either the get rich quick scheme, which is buying, flipping, turning over property, highly leveraged, taking on a ton of debt with the idea of selling it fast for big profit. The other school of thought, of course, is to buy real estate, hold on to it, rent it out, and to let those properties appreciate in value and have the debt be paid down over time so that 10, 20, 30 years down the road, you have a portfolio of assets with very little debt earning you residual income, but that also provides you with high net worth because you own the real estate with no debt. My family was a buy and hold and get rich slow family. I've done flips. We've all done flips when the opportunity arises. But for us, it makes more sense for us to buy and hold property because, quite frankly, it's used as supplemental income for us. It's a way of bringing in more money. And so the question is now the right time to consider buying to flip or buying to hold or both or neither? Here's my answer to that. You have to be able to find the good deals, and you have to be prepared to take advantage of that opportunity immediately. a lot of people have become investors over the past year or two. We've had investors in our market for years. When our market was in the dumps and the bottom fell out of the market, investors really helped us get back to normalcy because they were the ones snatching up all the properties. I snatched up as many as I could afford because I saw the value there. But today's market is very challenging for investors because of the price they have to pay in order to acquire the real estate. Now, the good news is we have not seen a break or a lapse or a reduction in rent. Rent has gone up just as much as prices have gone up. So theoretically, you can still rent your property out and earn money on it. But we used to be able to see a 15% return on investment for rental properties. Now, you'd be lucky if you can get 7 to 8%. And that's just the market average. That's just where the market is right now. I'm not saying that it's impossible to find a return on investment of 15% on your money, but they're very hard to find and there's a lot of competition. So if you're thinking about investing in real estate, my advice for you would be to align yourself with a real estate agent that knows how to find those deals. And the majority of the time, those deals are going to be found off market. They're going to be through pocket listings. They're going to be through the grapevine of hearing of somebody that's thinking about selling their house or they're in a bad situation and they need to sell now. That is how you as an investor take advantage of opportunities in the marketplace and beat other investors to the table. Now, as far as flipping goes, I think those are very challenging to find right now. The people that make money on flips are the people that buy homes in really poor condition. They add value to the property and then they sell it for top dollar. It's very difficult to buy a home, paint it, put new flooring in, and then make a 20% return on your investment. The market just isn't there right there. There's not enough of a spread between what you can buy it for and what you can sell it for, in my mind at least, to inherit that level of risk. Because at the end of the day, when you're flipping property, it's a highly risky proposition. A lot of people buy those properties for cash. They invest cash to fix them up, and then they sell them. So if you have a large portion of cash invested into a property that you've renovated, obviously you have to sell it. You have to buy the property with the end in mind. You have to know what you can sell that home for before you buy it and before you renovate it. You make your money on investments when you purchase the property, not when you sell it, because that's the part that you can control. You determine how much you want to pay for a property. You determine what your required return on investment is, and then you just reverse engineer the offer. So if you're thinking about investing in real estate, I am not here to say that it's impossible. I am here to say, however, that you're going to have some challenges by way of competition from other investors. You're also going to be dealing with sellers that are in a market where they can get pretty darn close to fair market value for their house. So they're going to have to be enticed or convinced, or they're going to have some situation that is going to allow you, the buyer, to buy it for a low enough price to make the whole thing worthwhile. So that's my spiel on investments and investors right now. When I come back, I want to talk about Airbnb because there's some really interesting stuff going on in Charleston with regard to Airbnb. I'm going to explain what that is, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know if you're going to consider putting your home on Airbnb or VRBO. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA. 1250 WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I always like to take just a little bit of time to say thank you very much to those of you that tune into this program and use it as a reliable source of information so that you can stay informed with our real estate market here in Charleston. So if you're thinking about buying, selling, investing in real estate, we just talked about investing in real estate if you're just joining us, I invite you to give me a call personally. I'd love the opportunity to assist you with your real estate needs. I can be reached at 843-345-1273. That's my cell phone, 345-1273. Or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can look at everything I have for sale, everything I've sold, search the MLS, learn more about me. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about what I do to market my properties for sale, how I've been able to achieve an average days on market of 38 days, selling for 98% of asking price. And you can also learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. So listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to for that. So if you're just joining us, we were just talking about investors and investment properties. And what I want to talk about now is Airbnb. I think at this point, most people have heard of Airbnb or VRBO. VRBO stands for Vacation Rental by Owner. But if you don't know what Airbnb is, Airbnb was founded in 2008. It's been around for quite a while at this point. But it's a website that people can use to rent out their homes to guests. It has over, I think, 1 million listings at this point. It's in over 30,000 cities. It's in 190 countries. It's used worldwide to rent out either your home or a room in your home or something in your home to guests so that you can earn some extra income as opposed to them going and staying in a hotel or having to pay for a full week's rental at a vacation rental. You can do this for a day. You can do it for 3 days. There's an open book there. But there's been an issue here in Charleston lately with regard to Airbnb. And the city of Charleston began wrestling with Airbnb last year when it started issuing citations to homeowners with penalties of up to $1,092 per violation for short-term rental ordinances that they're breaking. It's also spilled over into Mount Pleasant, where, if you have a primary residence and the owner or tenant isn't living in a so-called planned development area, the owner or tenant needs to obtain a special exception to rent or sublet space for 28 days or less. So basically, bed and breakfast is what we're talking about. Bed and breakfasts also need to have a business license. So there's this story of this lady that was using Airbnb in downtown Charleston. And somebody contacted her. They asked a bunch of questions about the space that she was renting. They only wanted it for 2 nights. They asked about the ordinance in downtown Charleston, and she did admit that, yes, there was a ordinance that said that you couldn't rent properties out in 30 days or less, but it was still available if she wanted it, and she would honor the booking. She said, all right, well, great. I'd like to come and I'd like to check the space out. So she gets a knock on the door, and it's not a tenant. It's a City of Charleston Livability Code Officer. Handed her a fine of $1,092 for violating the ordinance that says houses in her neighborhood can't be rented for shorter than 30 days. So obviously when she learned about this, or really when she got caught, quite honestly, and heard that she was violating town rules, she stopped taking new bookings and she applied for a bed and breakfast license with the Board of Zoning Appeals. This has become a big issue for a lot of people because they've purchased property with the idea that they can put it on Airbnb and earn more money than they could if they were doing a long-term rental. So I'll just tell you my story. I sold my home about 2.5 months ago, and we sold it very fast. We purchased another home very fast, but we wanted to do some work to the home we were moving into, so we needed to try and find a place to stay. And we were looking at Isle of Palms. We were looking in downtown Charleston. We prefer to stay in Mount Pleasant because that's where we live. But there was a property in downtown Charleston that was renting out their house for $350 a night. But people were paying it. They were booked. And so I saw this. I was like, wow, that's an incredible amount of money. We're looking at almost $4,000 a month for a home that should be renting on a long-term basis for about $2,000 a month. So they're basically earning twice as much as they could by doing short-term rentals than if they just stick a 12-month lease on that property. So we tried to get it, but it was booked until way in advance, something crazy like November. Didn't work for us. But anyways, the point is a lot of people have purchased properties specifically in downtown Charleston with the idea of using Airbnb to earn more money as a rental property on a short-term basis than if they just put a long-term tenant in place. Now, the city of Charleston, over the past 2 months, has issued 13 livability code citations, which have a maximum fine, by the way, of $1,092. And they had twice as many citations over the past 6 months combined. So if you're in downtown Charleston, you really need to know whether or not you're in an area that allows for short-term rentals. Now, there was an article that came out from the Post and Courier, and a city planner, Tim Keene, said that they're specifically targeting the vacation rental ordinance because downtown neighborhoods are already steeped with enough tourism activity. Now, if you're in Cannonboro or Elliottboro, kind of the Upper King area, you're allowed to host vacation rentals because that neighborhood needs more visitors, according to Tim Keene. So they're not cracking down on that area. But if you're south of Broad and you're trying to use Airbnb, I would venture a guess and say that you are more than likely going to get caught at some point. So it's very important. And, look, I'm not here to say that I'm an expert on town ordinances, but what you need to know is this. You need to check with the zoning department or the Board of Zoning Appeals to see whether or not the property you own and want to rent out on a short-term basis is eligible for a short-term rental or not. You might have to go and apply for a bed and breakfast license, business license, in order to be able to rent your property out for 30 days or less. So my advice to you is to be very careful if you're going to use Airbnb, because they are clearly cracking down on people that are using this service. There was a story of a lady that this was also in Post and Courier, that she had her home in Ion, and she had an apartment above her garage. She wanted to rent it out on Airbnb. They weren't using it. It was kind of just used for guests and in-laws anyways. So she started renting it out, but in order for her to do that, she needed to obtain a permit or a business license through the town of Mount Pleasant. So they had a hearing, and a bunch of people from Ion said, no, we don't want this because it's going to create traffic problems and noise problems, and it's going to mess with our roadways, and it's going to be more wear and tear than if somebody was living there as a primary residence, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I can understand where they're coming from, especially if neighborhoods like Ion or other neighborhoods, especially upscale neighborhoods, start having a bunch of tenants coming in and out that are partying in the house or don't have the same regard for the neighborhood that maybe a homeowner would. So if you're thinking about using Airbnb or VRBO, you just need to be very careful with regard to where your property is located and whether or not you have the ability to use those services. So that's my fair warning with regard to Airbnb. And we're seeing a lot of investors contacting us with the idea of using Airbnb. And the silver lining is, man, you can earn a lot of money on a short-term rental basis if you're using Airbnb as opposed to doing the long-term rental route. I think a happy medium between Airbnb and just renting your property out for a 6 or 12-month term or even a 1-month term would be to do a corporate rental. This is an area of the market where I see some good opportunities for people. If you think, I'll just take my own situation. We ended up staying in a corporate rental. It was a 2-bed, 2-bath condo on the 3rd floor of this building with no elevator in the middle of summer. And I think we paid $3,000 that month to stay there. That was almost double what we would have had to pay if we were on a long-term rental basis. So I've talked about investors, and I've talked about how we find those good deals and what sort of return on investment we can look for. But I'm not seeing a lot of people taking advantage of all of the relocation that we've seen in Charleston over the past few years, all of the corporate relocations that we've seen, and the need that they have for intermediary housing between the time they get here and the time they ultimately purchase a property. So if you're an investor, it's obviously going to require you to buy something but then furnish it. And it's not just furniture. I mean, it's cups, it's knives, it's napkins, it's everything that somebody would need to live in that property. But the return on investment that you can get for that far exceeds what you're going to get from a long-term rental perspective. So for those of you that are out there that are considering buying a rental property, I would say let's try and target some areas that appeal to the corporate relocation crowd and see if we can find a good enough deal to where we can rent that property out, come up with some sort of idea of what it's going to earn on a seasonal basis for a corporate client so that they can go and they can stay in it. It's much better than them staying in a hotel. And I would also encourage, quite honestly, them to allow pets. I usually don't. I don't like pets in my rental properties, but if it's going to be a corporate rental, there's such few options anyways that if you allow pets to stay there, you obviously charge a little bit more for that. You charge a pet deposit fee or you charge rent for pets. It's commonplace. It happens. It's not outlandish to charge people for the pets because of the wear and tear they put on the property. But if you buy something, you allow pets and you have it furnished and you allow people to stay there for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 months or whatever the case might be, that's where I see some good opportunities for people to take advantage of the market and really fill a need. Obviously, that's what we do as investors, as we look for the opportunity, we fill the need. So any questions about Airbnb, I'm happy to talk with you about it more. Feel free to call me personally. My number is 843-345-1273, or you can, again, contact me through my website, listingsincharleston.com, where you can take a look at everything I have for sale, everything I've sold, search the MLS. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on that Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk about two more things. We're going to talk about inspections and what I see playing out in this particular segment of the market, what's happening right now with home inspections. And then we're also going to talk very quickly about the 2015 profile of home staging. And, of course, we're here to answer your questions. Feel free to call into the studio, 843-556-1250. Stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. We'll be right back.
Find Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues next on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Now, the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show continues on Charleston's Big Talker, 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Little under 10 minutes left in the program, so if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to share, any general knowledge items that I can help you with from a real estate basis, feel free to call into the studio. The number here is 843-556-1250. That's 843-556-1250. And again, if you're thinking about hiring me as your real estate agent, I mentioned a little earlier in the program that we wrote our 100th contract already this year, and so if you're looking for an experienced agent, I'd love the opportunity to earn your business. You can call me personally at 843-345-1273, or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. You can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission if you're thinking about selling your house, among other things, on that website, listingsincharleston.com. So a few more things I want to talk about this morning. I want to talk about home inspections for just a few minutes. And I mentioned earlier just what's going on with our market in regards to the fact that buyers are, for the most part, paying the seller's price. Sellers are getting what they're asking or what they want for their properties more often than not. It's a function of low inventory and high buyer demand and increasing prices. So I have found that buyers are willing to pay, for the most part, what sellers are asking if the market supports it. But then when the home inspection comes, that's their opportunity to try and make some money back. They're really trying to beat up sellers over the home inspection process. So obviously, the purpose of a home inspection is to unveil as many problems as possible in that home. I mean, even new construction homes have a laundry list of items that home inspectors find. That's their job, is to find problems. So what I'm finding in the market right now is that although the buyer may have agreed to pay the price that the seller was asking, and the seller, for all intents and purposes, kind of won that round of negotiations, when it comes time for the inspection and the home has already been taken off the market, it's under contract, slowing show down because buyers don't look at homes that are under contract for the most part. They're getting the home inspection, and then they're very simply sending the entire report to the seller, and they're saying, here, this is what we found on the inspection report. We'd like you to fix these items. And what to take that one step further, if you've ever seen a home inspection report, the inspector will take pictures, they'll circle things, and then they'll write a short description of the deficiency. But in some instances, it's like shorthand. It's like chicken scratch. And it's very difficult to understand what specifically needs to be repaired. They'll tell you what the problem is, but they don't tell you how it needs to be repaired. So they'll say, consult a licensed contractor. So from a seller standpoint, let's say that I'm representing a seller and I receive a home inspection report, and there's an addendum to the contract that says that the seller will review the attached inspection report and fix all items that have been noted as being deficient. Obviously, the seller is going to look at that report, and if they say something like, the door rubs against the door jamb, or you need to clip the bushes because bushes need to be 18 inches from the side of the house, you get to a point where you have to differentiate between the major issues with the house and then all the little nickel and dime nitpick items. But for the most part, what I'm seeing right now is buyers are sending that full report and they're asking for the seller to fix everything. This is where listing agents help sellers keep money. It's not where you make money, it's where you keep your money, by helping sellers understand what's appropriate to fix and what's not appropriate to fix. Now, every once in a while, a seller, usually not my sellers, but a seller will just say, okay, we'll agree to that. And then they'll go and they'll fix everything with regard to the house. Most of the time, buyers are okay with negotiating. But if they ask for everything up front, every once in a while, a seller will agree to it, and then boom, they've got an entirely new house for the most part. But again, a home inspection is where a seller can really keep a lot of their money, because a lot of the stuff on these inspection reports are unnecessary. But the other thing about these inspection reports and the addendum that's written on the contract says that everything needs to be done by licensed individuals. Again, this is where I look at an inspection report and I go through it with the seller and I say, okay, let's look at this report. Let's determine what we're willing to fix. And let's also determine what we think a professional needs to do versus what you can do yourself. Or maybe you know a handyman that can go and replace a wax ring on your toilet if your toilet's loose. You know, a wax ring is $3 at Lowe's. So if you know how to replace a wax ring on your toilet, it'll cost you $3 and a little bit of your time, versus having a licensed plumber come out and they're literally going to charge you $125 to replace that wax ring. So you start adding up this list of all these little items. If everything has to be done by a licensed contractor or licensed individuals, they're going to charge you for it. And the bottom line is contractors are incredibly busy right now. It is hard to find contractors to do work on your property, even big jobs. I mean, we had a big job on the home that we purchased. We were doing a pretty large scale renovation, and it took us a long time to find a contractor that was going to be, number one, reasonable with their price, but number two, that had the time to do it. So if this addendum to the contract says that you have to have a licensed individual do everything on that report, you know, making sure light fixtures work or trimming hedges or simple things, you know, your baseboard or your tub needs caulk. Those are things that you can do yourself, or you can have a friend help you out with that has some idea of how to do those types of household projects, DIY projects, and it not cost you an arm and a leg. So for those of you that have your home under contract, or that are considering selling your home and we put it under contract, the home inspection is an opportunity for the buyer to, in some ways, not necessarily stick it to the seller, but for them to renegotiate and make them feel like they've gotten a good deal. Because if they're going to pay top dollar for your house, they want it to be in good condition. Most buyers don't want to pay top dollar and be left with a laundry list of things that have to be repaired. But the good news, if you're a seller, is that bottom line, it is a seller's market. And for those properties that list and go under contract quickly, the flip side to all of this is that you could say, well, we went under contract in 5 days. We had a bunch of showings in the first 5 days. We're going to agree to some of this stuff because I think it's going to be need to be fixed regardless, but we're not going to fix everything on this list. And we can either reduce the price, or we can offer you a credit in the form of closing costs, or we can make the repairs, but we're not going to do all of them. And for a lot of these homes, especially the older homes that were built in the 60s, 70s, I mean, really doesn't matter when it was built. It just depends on whether or not the homeowner maintained the home or not. But a lot of these homes are going to have a lot of things wrong with them. So go back to the buyer, ask them, what are the things on this list that are most important to you? Because we're not going to fix everything. Tell me what you want fixed, and I'll tell you whether or not we can get that done based on the budget that we've allocated for repairs after we sign that initial contract. The other thing that you can do is when you put the property on the market, or when you agree to accept a buyer's contract, you can put in there that it's going to be as is at that price. If the seller feels like they're giving more than they should on the initial round of negotiations when the property goes under contract, then you can put in the contract and say, look, the property is as is. You have the right to an inspection. I can't prevent you from getting a home inspection to determine what's going on with the house, but you need to know right now that I'm not going to make repairs. And sometimes that puts enough of a notice onto the buyer that you're just not going to deal with it. So that's where agents can help people save a lot of money, is through the home inspection process. So again, if you're thinking about selling your house, feel free to reach out to me. Listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.